Welcome to Let's Talk Death, conversations to inform and inspire. Let's Talk Death is a series of conversations with some amazing people from various fields. Our goal through these conversations is to normalize, educate, and demystify the taboo around death, dying, and the journey of grief. Hello, welcome to this episode of Let's Talk Death. I'm Fran Solomon.
And I'm Andy McNeil.
And we're thrilled to be your host for these conversations. Let's Talk Death is brought to you by Heal Grief, a social support network creating community after someone has died. Everything we do is inspired by our core belief that no one should ever grieve alone.
Our goal with this program is to have a friendly chat with some amazing people so we can help normalize and educate our Heal Grief community. Our guest today is Alexandra Vassilaros. Alexandra is a Pulitzer Finalist, playwright, mother, and founder. Alexandra's work in the theater is extensive. Her plays were commissioned and premiered at American theaters on and off-Broadway, as well as in featured international festivals. She was the winner of a Jefferson Award for Best New Play at Steppenwolf Theatre Company and was a co-finalist for the Pulitzer Prize for Drama for the play Omnium Gatherum. In addition, she's been a guest artist at premier theater institutions such as Juilliard and New York University. In 2016, 1 year after the passing of her husband of 23 years, Alexandra pivoted from writing for the theater and founded the Make Meaning Workshop. Alexandra continues to develop her work with hundreds of women, men, and young adults facing the challenges that loss, crisis, and change inevitably bring. She is the mother of three wonderful young men. Alexandra, we are delighted to have you as a guest on our show.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
Alexandra, before we speak about your work, may I first take you back to 2015 and ask you to share your experience. What was it like for you, a mother of three young boys and newly widowed?
I think the first word that comes to mind is stunned. I felt stunned. I felt wordless. As a writer, it's sort of odd and yet refreshing, but disorienting to suddenly have no words to explain the depth of disorientation that I was feeling. I felt obviously terrified that my life had changed so radically that I wouldn't ever recognize myself, or my identity was so interrupted. Our identity as a family was interrupted, was obviously going to be violently changed, and I would say that I wondered a lot. I just wondered, how will I be okay? How will they be okay? How will I take care of the kids? How will I energetically replace or make up for the loss of my husband for my family? So I was stunned. Every question I had was streaming through my thinking all the time.
You reminded me when you the way you described grief. I've heard so many people describe it that way, and particularly you being a writer, to hear you say that lack of words. I've heard it so often. The way I put it sometimes is I'll say that grief lacks a language. That's part of the struggle. Is it's how do we really what words do we have in our current language that truly capture what that experience is for people? And it's just so personal. I think it's hard to do for anyone.
Well, I like what you said also, because it reminds me that grief and love are exactly like the inside and outside of a cup. You wouldn't feel that much grief if you didn't also know that much love. I found that became a ballast for me, that grief was evidence of love. And so love has a powerful healing element to me. Even just saying the word love gives me some balance and knowing that those two things can exist simultaneously. I don't have to be captured in grief. I could be known in grief and love. And that grief was testimony to the depth of our shared love of my husband and my kid's father. And as a friend, he was so prominent in so many people's lives. So that was already in the beginning a way for me to orient home, wherever home is, but home held known, experienced, brightening love. And that helped me know grief better, because it has two sides at least.
We often
grief side,
we often say the deeper the love, the deeper the grief. And when people ask, when am I going to get over this? My question back is usually, why would you want to? Why would you want to take away the depth of love that you hold so closely in your heart and mind for someone? Yes, it's painful that they're not here in physical presence, but why would you want to give that up?
I guess the first thing that's so true, and it's important to remember that grief and love for me are so bound together, and that's the mercy of it, right? Because there's great what's more important in a life, than to know that much love? What's a greater gift? And so I would be peripherally aware, as I was so struck by loss, just the absence of that person that day, and the absence of the routines of our lives, the things that you could just expect in a day. Those were obviously interrupted, radically changed. I mean, the positive, in a way, was that his illness was long. And the last 6 to year of his life, we knew that this was likely not going to, it was going to end by him dying. I almost said it wasn't going to end well. That's not true. His death was quite beautiful. So I interrupted myself because it was so surrounded by so much potent felt and expressed love. So that was one thing. We can get back to that. But the two experiences of immediate loss and then kind of overarching awareness of the gift that we'd lived.
Yeah. So I am curious with your children. You mentioned, and it is a struggle that many of our viewers probably have as well. And it's well, what now? There's this energy that was this person. They weren't just they were certainly a physical presence, but they're this energy, and to use your term, an energy of this love that they gave, or attention, or time, or personality, everything that a person brings to the world. Now what? How can I be both of those things? What does that look like for my children? And I'm curious if you'd share maybe a little bit about what that experience was with you and your children.
Well, I used to say that my husband felt like the back of my chair, and I would lean back, and there he was. It was how he sort of held in grace the potency of our family. And there he was, lean back, there he is. Okay, then it's sort of like, okay, I'm now sitting on a stool without the comfort of this sturdy back. And he was a sturdy guy. I mean, he was a guy's guy, a man's man. He had great male friends. He was a pilot. He was a sailor. He was in the Green Beret. He was a huge-hearted Greek-American man and a great father. Like, I can imagine then when they woke up, from the birth experience and they were in the world, they were like, great choice, guys. Great guy, great mom. I mean, I hope they would say that, but there was such a unit of real joy and relief because we'd found each other, and it was a good It was a good coming together. And then we had these 3 children. So what was it like? I'm sure it was extremely disorienting for them. My oldest was 19. My next was he 19? Oh no, my oldest was 20. My next was 18, and the other one was 15. 3 boys. So suddenly that absence is deeply felt. And I have to say that I think that each of them struggled in their own way. And and definitely, even more than that, I think there was a kind of roaming, kind of sense of energetic loss of dad. And it was big. And I don't underestimate that, though they didn't have language, especially as young people, they didn't have language for what that absence, what that kind of chasm felt like. And we all know when we go through grief, the weather of grief is so profound. And that weather comes, and when that weather starts to come in, in the beginning, especially, it's sort of an unknown kind of storm is approaching. And the best thing I could do literally was hold on to my chair, hold on to that stool and see how I would withstand the amount of emotion. It's even deeper than emotion, isn't it? It's something else that can't be named entirely.
It's this whole experience. This whole experience, yeah.
It's stormy. It kind of has a ferocious kind of beauty in it, because it also gives meaning to life itself.
Yeah.
And I think that they went off to college immediately, got very involved in relationships. Thank God they had the structure of college. But my youngest was home with me, and he was looking at me like, what happened? Daddy died. Tonio went to school. Luca's preparing to go to school. What's going on here? It's just you and me. I mean, he looked so disappointed. And I mean, we both were. And so I think that what I tried to do was stabilize the routines of our lives and keep them going, even the vacations. Just let's do what's familiar. Let's go on our boat. We had a journey on our boat, which was painful with the absence of my husband, but also orienting. Let's go, where it's familiar and adventurous. Adventure was helpful to us, to go places we had not been before. We did that. We went to Australia on a trip to visit my son in college, and that was good for us. New experiences that sort of were a little vaulted out of the ordinary.
It's somehow walking in your grief while at the same time allowing meaningful and purposeful experiences in your life. And a lot of people have a hard time finding that balance, but you kind of have to do both, when we are grieving or just after a loss so significant in our lives. So I wonder if we could turn, Fran, I think, go ahead.
I want to, so I read on your website that you started writing me down on paper. Can you dive a bit into that?
Yeah. It's what a privilege, that unfortunately loss happens to everybody. It's not special, but it does feel enormously special when we're going through it. And I wanted to find a way and I did this right in the beginning, even before I founded the Make Meaning workshop. I was noticing so much miraculous evidence of the miraculous around my husband's illness, and especially during the last stages of his life and then death. And there were miracles all over the place. And I would orient to love that I saw happening between people, like love streams between the way people were looking at him while he was dying. And instead of being sort of immensely sort of allergic to things that I was noticing that were so deeply personal and rough, I started to lean into them. And as I did that, I thought, I want to write this down. I don't want to forget this. But as a writer, I thought, I'm too overwhelmed to write pretty. So I'll just write me. I'll just be honest. I don't even have to write full sentences. I'll write phrases. And I called the book, because I'm a writer, I wanted to give myself permission to not write well. Just take that off the table. Don't even think about it. Just write what you see. Write what you feel. Write you down. Write me down. I wrote it down in a book that I called Fragments. I still have it with me. I almost take it to the beginning of every workshop I do, because it was evidence of so much testimony, to so much love exchanged, love noticed, loss noticed. I mean, of course, like I say, they go together, but I wanted a record of it.
Beautiful. Beautiful. And now tell us about your Make Meaning workshops.
So when my husband was very ill, I started doing some service with the Bowery Mission in Manhattan. They're a mission that attends to people who are homeless and looking for life transformation, or just food, or a meal, a shower, and some care. And I started working at the women's program there, leading writing groups. And I would read a poem, I would give them prompts, and the woman would start writing. And one of the things that they gave me was incredible honesty. They wrote themselves down. I would give them a prompt, and what they shared, the depth of crisis each of them had gone through to find themselves in a shelter you can't underestimate what they've been through. Usually it's a loss, a loss of job, loss of a partner, loss of a parent, loss of a home. And there are usually 3 or 4 crises that happen one after the other during which time they find themselves homeless. And so their rawness helped me to feel comfortable with mine. Their vulnerability changed me energetically, made me feel comfortable, made me feel at home. Their ability to explore their crisis on paper gave me permission to explore mine on paper. They were surprised that I was going through what they'd been through, and I was tenderized by hearing about what they'd been through. So there was this beautiful exchange, and I thought, maybe there's a way to explore grief in a context like this with others who've been through the crisis of loss. And that's how Make Meaning Workshop was born.
Wow, that's we hear it all over and over again, but it is we'll step in to try to help others or save people or whatever, and then we find out at the same time they're helping us, they're saving us, it's really an incredible when you put yourself out there for other people, how much you get in return. I know it's a cliche, but it's a reality. And when you live it and you experience it firsthand, it's overwhelming. Really is probably not, that's an underwhelming word to even describe it, I think.
Oh, but you're right, it was overwhelming, and I would be so softened when I say tenderized, because you can have 2 responses to grief and loss and crisis, as in their case especially. And I could see this. You could get very defensive about life, tough. It toughens you up. I'm going to be tough. I'm not going to let this happen to me again, like you really could, but I'm going to try, and I'm going to be, meet the world with this armor. And I could see where we could, in the workshops, we would all melt the armor and, be in this kind of vulnerable grace. And there was some, beautiful exchange of vulnerability, like, welcome to the human race. Our choice is to be made tenderer by life, not be rougher and tougher. I mean, where does it actually get us? But it's hard to do that. It's really hard because I remember also there would be women in the workshop and then in subsequent workshops. And then I remember writing myself like, okay, this happened, no more. Nothing else can happen. I've lost my husband. I've lost my mother, who I was very close to. Nothing else should happen. Okay, stop it. Like as though that was even possible. I mean, I can only laugh at it right now, but I have a lot of mercy for myself because you just want to kind of, shield yourself against the weather of life.
Yeah, I always share when people ask me about the work that we do here, I always share that it's been a gift to me, the work that I do. It has taught me to love more deeply, to forgive more quickly, and to be as present as possible in the moment you're in, because the next moment's not guaranteed.
Right. Absolutely. And you know what? That's one of the miracles that death teaches us. In some ways, it gives us all a way to deepen whatever we decide our faith is. Whether our faith is just what you said, living more in the moment. That's where loss has so much to offer us, not just what it takes away.
Yeah. Yeah, but what we receive.
Yeah, what we receive. And there was one day where my husband was very ill. We went to the movies. He was barely eating. He was towards that, within a month of him passing. And I started to develop this high sensitivity, as we all do, to the person who's dying, what their needs are, what they want, what are they feeling? What are they noticing? What can I do? And I remember him saying, we were in the movies, and he said, I'm in the mood for an ice cream sandwich, which was a very odd request. And we're in the movies, they only have popcorn and candy. So I said, I know. And I got up, I ran outside the movie theater. I went to this little 5 and dime store. I picked through the ice cream, brought it back to him. He took one bite. He went, I don't want it. He was going through chemo and everything. And I took it and I said to myself, this is kind of what nurses do. They have this great devotion. That's devotion. I was like, oh, that's devotion. And I liked myself better in a moment when I was otherwise like, oh, this is so hard. Oh, I was like, I could do something for him. Devotion is a great quality that we all have the capacity for. Well, most of us. And when we notice that we're able to give it, it kind of built me back. I always wanted to notice that I was devoted. I see it in other people. I could notice in myself, give myself a little like, yeah, that's what a steward of love does.
Yeah. Well, this sense of self-awareness that happens to us. So I am curious as to, so how do people access your workshop? Tell us a little bit about how they can make that connection, because I am curious how that happens.
Sure. So you can go online and go to makemeaningworkshop.com and read about my journey and the journey that a person might take if they're taking the workshop, because it's especially not designed for writers. It's just designed for people who are interested in discovering more about their own capacity to balance loss and crisis and grief, and discover the details that are so they're there for us to notice. But if we don't necessarily have a context for noticing, we might not. It's part of the practice of journaling, grounding ourselves in the moment that we're in while we share with others. You can also go to the Instagram, which is @MakeMeaningWorkshop, which has a lot of, I'm very proud of the work we do, both at our site and also on our Instagram page, because our Instagram page is a little more, changes every single day. And then you can access workshops by signing up for our email, for our newsletter, or just put your email in there and we'll get back to you and let you know every time there's a workshop. There's one coming up on grief, loss, and healing in the holidays, which can be obviously so triggering. So yeah, that's how you do it.
Awesome.
Alexandra, we want to thank you so much for being a guest here at Let's Talk Death, for sharing the inspiration behind your work, the love for your husband, and the way you saw love through the tragedy of his death. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
We also want to thank those who are joining us for this episode of Let's Talk Death. If you would like to learn more about Heal Grief, please visit us at healgrief.org. At healgrief.org, you can learn more about all of the programs and resources of Heal Grief, including our national network of support for grieving young adults. It's a program we call Actively Moving Forward.
And if you know of a bereaved adult, refer them to the AMF app, where adults of all ages connect with others experiencing a similar death loss. And last, make sure to sign up on healgrief.org to receive our newsletter for links to future episodes of Let's Talk Death.
So again, with that, thank you for joining us, and we will see you next time on Let's Talk Death.